Moving on, the 12 guiding principles. So I'm not going to read out each and every one of these 12 guiding principles. The source of these guiding principles is actually recorded here, agilemanifesto.org. So all these principles are important for a project manager who wants to follow the agile principles. You can please visit this website, the agilemanifesto.org. This was developed, as I said, in back in 2001 as an introduction to the agile for the IT industry, basically. So this mentions clearly what 12 guiding principles are, along with the four values that we have learned before. We have learned the four agile values in the previous slide. So this website talks about those four values and these 12 guiding principles for us to develop this agile approach. So all these processes or the guiding principles, they are very easy. They are quite self-explanatory. I strongly recommend you all to go through this very simple website. Just have a look at it once. You'll have a fair understanding of what these guiding principles are. Moving on. Okay, next step is defining Scrum. So Scrum method. This is one of the agile methodologies. You might have remembered the umbrella under which there are so many agile methods. So Scrum is one of such methodologies of agile. So there are other methods also, like Kanban. We have learned Kanban before. I talked about DSDM, AUP, extreme programming, etc. So Scrum method is the latest emerging trend. Most of the organizations are following this Scrum. The XP or the extreme programming is also one of the fastly being accepted methodology. But if in case the time permits in this complete series, we will dedicate some time also for this. Or it's not important for the PMP exam right now. It's an additional subject. So we'll focus on Scrum methodology for the sake of examination. So let's go ahead and define the Scrum. So basically, Scrum is nothing but a set of practices and guidelines. So the rules about how we play the game of this agile management. So this is majorly based on the three key qualities. First thing is transparency, and second key pillar is the inspection, and third is the adaptation. Let's understand what these terms are. So the Scrum, it has to be as transparent as possible. What do we mean by transparency? We mean that everything that is going on within the project, when I say everything, it is the status of the project, the progress of the project, the latest approvals of the project, or what are the next steps that are going to come. So everybody in the team might not be aware of the complete project life cycle, right? What are the decisions that are going on in the middle of the project? There might be a customer meeting which talks about some changes, some key changes, which might affect the work of some important key stakeholder. So all this important information that is important about the project, we will have much better clarity through this Scrum methodology. So it must be very clearly visible, or at least have a communication plan that, okay, I'm going to communicate about these statuses in the next sprint to come, right? So some communication plan has to be in place. So that is a key pillar of this total Scrum methodology. And then if we talk about the inspection, there has to be an inspection at frequent intervals. So what are we inspecting here? We are inspecting whether the complete set of activities, whether they're actually going towards the right direction or not. When we are in a sprint, what happens is the total number of stakeholders, the 10 or 12 stakeholders that we have, usually the Scrum team is limited to 9. The most or the biggest number in this Scrum, as defined by this agile practitioners, is that the team has to be 3 to 9. So these 9 team members, they are going to present a lot of backlog tasks. And from this huge list of backlog tasks, the Scrum Master is going to decide which tasks are to be prioritized and which tasks are to be done for that particular sprint. So we have to inspect whether these tasks are actually contributing towards the progress of the project, or are we just running in circles over and over. And then he also should inspect whether the tasks are actually being executed, or are the stakeholders just closing the tasks just for the sake of closing. So that kind of inspection is important here. And adaptation talks, I think, very much about accepting the changes. Sometimes negative changes are also accepted, sometimes positive changes are also accepted. When we say negative changes, let's say one of the requirements is dropped out. So we have worked on this requirement for like 2 sprints. So that's like 1 month. And then the customer says, we don't want this requirement at all. So it's also good, right? We will at least stop working on this further, adding value for this requirement further. So such adoption of positive changes or negative changes, everything has to be welcome in the Scrum methodology. So I think this is the whole idea of what a Scrum is. Let's move on to the next slide. Activities. So we will define all these activities that are going to happen in the Scrum. So first, let us learn what sprints are. What are sprints? Right. So sprints are nothing but a predefined iterations of the work. So I think you all remember this rolling wave from one of the lessons. So this talks about agile very much. So this is the actual sprint. What happens here is after this is a sprint cycle, and then there'll be a second sprint, third sprint, fourth sprint, and this little arrow talks about the daily Scrum meetings. Like we will understand what these Scrum meetings are in just a bit. So we have already touched upon this, and I think sprint is usually 2 to 4 week cycle of all the activities that are related to the project. So at the start of the project, we have a big list of to-do items, and we target to close these items at the end of the sprint. As I said, if there are 9 stakeholders or 9 key team members who bring their tasks, let's say 9, and each person brings out 3 tasks. So we have for one sprint 27 tasks to be finished. So after the end of this 2 week sprint, all the 27 are targeted to be closed. And if not, whatever 2 3 tasks that are left, they will be added to the next sprint to come. So second thing is planning of a sprint. First, a backlog of all the activities is created. How is this backlog created? First, we have a product backlog. Backlog is nothing but a total list of tasks which are not prioritized, right? So we just write down or list down all the tasks that are related or targets to achieve in a product. When we talk about the example of a product or a process or a result, first we list down all the targets that we have to achieve in that particular product. So from this product backlog, a project backlog is formed. So each of the product backlog might have another further list of project backlogs. So such all that list of activities with identified roles and responsibilities is listed down before. Usually, for creating this backlog, you have to be great visionary, right? So there are multiple components in a complex project. Like for example, consider a bicycle, right? So a bicycle itself might have 100 parts. So all these 100 parts might have unique product requirements or product backlogs, and from these each of the product backlog, we will have thousands of project backlogs. Right? So all this cannot be listed by one single person. So the development team members themselves, they contribute to this backlog, right? So all the 9 key stakeholders that were identified, they will list down that okay, for me to finish my project or my product, I need to finish these tasks. So such a list is formed, and then the backlog is created. So once the backlog is created, it will be prioritized again based on the product owner's decision and the development team's decision in that sprint meeting, and then it is initiated for the Scrum. Hence, the sprint is set to be started. If in case consider one of the tasks is like very huge, creation of one of the, let's say, mechanical or a gear cycle, the gear development in that cycle, it's a huge task and it cannot be finished in this 4 week sprint or 2 week sprint. So what happens is they will further break down these tasks again based on that WBS methodology, and these subtasks are added to these sprints.